Welcome back to another episode of Elevator Dialogue here on the Unkle Junior Network. I go by the name of Uncle Junior, and with me on today's panel is the Wolfpack members. Ladies and gentlemen, all the way over there chewing. I think he eating his nuts over there. Ladies and gentlemen, the other artist, Mr. Antoine Christopher, right beside him in the middle, holding it down. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Accountability himself, Mr. Victor Viziant, down at the bottom across the table with Christopher. He's just an ordinary guy trying to learn. And ladies and gentlemen, last but not least, the beast from the east, Mr. Georgia Bulldogs himself, the mindset coach, Dwayne Dwyer. Men, gentlemen, Wolfpack, how are y'all doing this evening?
Blessed.
I am well.
I love it, man. I
Good,
love it,
man.
man.
Hey, did
Love
you
it,
just
man.
howl just now?
He asked for the wolf pack. You know what I'm saying? You can't ask for the wolf pack and not
That's what's up,
expect to
man.
call from time to time. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's
I
what's
like
up.
it.
I like that.
I
I
like
see
it
what
too,
tonight is
man.
gonna be like already.
That's
Oh
what I'm
man,
talking about then.
shenanigans.
Hey, man, thank you to everybody who has already joined in the chat, who joined in watching at home. I appreciate you for all of those different things like that. Thank you to the military folks out there who are watching. Ladies and gentlemen, we're gonna jump right into it tonight. We're gonna not going to waste a lot of time because this is something that we think is very important. Um, and I know at least for me, there were times where I compromised myself, good and bad, if that makes sense. So I just want to jump right into it tonight. So um, being true to yourself is one of the most important things a man can do, but it's not always easy. What are some of the situations where men feel pressure to compromise their identity or values, and how can they navigate these situations without losing themselves? Moreover, how can men strike a balance between honoring their own values and respecting the values and beliefs of others? Navigating situations where our values or identities are challenged can be difficult, especially when others' expectations or beliefs differ from our own. Men may find themselves feeling torn between the desire to please those around them and stand true to themselves. It can be hard to know when to stand firm and when to be more flexible. Furthermore, it is added complexity of respecting the values and beliefs of others. While it is important to honor our own values and beliefs, it is equally important to be mindful of the impact our actions and words may have on the others. Men must find ways to communicate their boundaries and values respectfully while being empathetic to their perspectives of others. In this discussion, our panel of men will explore the challenges of navigating conflicting values and how to find balance that honors both our own and others' beliefs. So, with that being said, what we're going to do is we're going to reach back a little bit and we're going to start thinking about, maybe some of our past experience where we may have compromised who we were for someone or something. And whoever wants to start first, please jump on it.
I think if anybody's been in a leadership capacity, you had to compromise what you wanted in the short term for an overall goal. It's the difference between being right and righteous. I think people do it all of the time when it's voting. We've seen the way people get behind political candidates. Republicans did it when they wanted the House. They did it when they wanted the office. They got all on one same sheet of music so they can accomplish one goal. And a lot of people had to compromise a lot of their morals and uh, political positions just to achieve the overall goal. I think that if you are doing something in service to a larger outcome that's greater than yourself, you're gonna be in a situation where you got to compromise what you want to do from what you got to do.
I'm gonna say, to me, when I hear the word compromise, I look at it as something called sacrifice, right? That's what a compromise to me is. Because in the beginning, when I was coming up, artists are, we don't get paid nothing, right? Because I drew for lower prices and had to break into the system. People wanted my artwork. I had to sell to them. I had to compromise. I had to give them the prices they wanted because I needed to get a name. I needed to build a name. So For me, compromise, every time I hear that word, I think about it as a sacrifice, because you have to give up something. And if you're achieving your goals moving forward, you're gonna have to give up something. It's not just gonna be bed of roses. So that's how I look at compromise.
I guess I would say I had to compromise who I was to become the man that I am. If that's a version of compromise that we can discuss. Um, I learned that the way that I've been taught and the way that I had been moving really, it wasn't helpful to where I wanted to go. So when I got around people that could help me get to where I needed to go, I had to compromise and let go of what was, so that way I could be. So I guess that would be my only kind of personal experience with compromise, just the compromise of learning that I need to let go of who I was to become who I'm supposed to be.
So, I peel onion. When my son was born, my first son, my first child, I was every bit of 21 years old. Um, had no idea what fatherhood was, what fatherhood was all about. Didn't even think about it, to be honest with you. And my girlfriend at the time said, "Yo, I'm pregnant." I'm like, "Yo," you know what I'm saying? It was like a whole life changing experience for me. And so, that being said, I compromised everything. First I started working. I worked two jobs and was going to school at the same time. I was in college at the same time, and the two jobs and going to college just wasn't working. And so I decided that I was going to join the army. Did not ever see myself being in the army whatsoever. It was just one of those things. So, in order for me to provide for my son and take care of my son at that particular point in time, I needed to compromise who I thought I was at that particular point in time, like Chris said, to become the man that I was, you know, at that point. So for me, that's what my early experience with compromising who I was. And if I'm being completely transparent, I had no idea who I was at that point either. And I think that's probably most people's story. So I say compromise, and I'm agreeing that it's compromise. It's compromising who I knew myself to be at that particular point in time, which in turn was also in relation to having no earthly idea of who I was. So yeah, that would be my first personal experience with compromising who I was.
Man, let me see. So when I first came into the military, like right before then, I was raised in the church. Darn, Charlotte ain't gonna, Charlotte Jordan gonna go. She gonna hear some of this. All right, so um, when we were raised in the church, and kind of sort of when I got to high school, I kind of stopped going. Went to college for a semester, came back. When I joined the military, like I hadn't really drank, hadn't really smoked, or did none of these things, right? Cursed, like a lot of these things I did, but it was like on a micro level. Man, when I got to Fort Carson, man, I was drinking every night. You know what I mean? On the weekend, I'm clubbing, like I'm hanging with women. I'm just like, bro, like that wasn't me. That's not how I was raised. You know what I mean? I was compromising who I was. I'm not saying that all of those things didn't, have an effect on me, not necessarily good or bad, but those experiences helped me be who I am today. However, at the time, that's not really who I was. And I was compromising the man who I was, but I was doing it for everybody else because I wanted to hang around Coach or hang around Vic, or I wanted to do what they wanted to, what they were doing to fit in. You know what I mean? It's like they were going to the club and they was hanging out and drinking and stuff. So I was like, wow, in order to be cool or to be down and to hang around people and have friends, that's what I did. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know about y'all, man. When y'all was in the military, when y'all was privates, but I was in combat arms, and that's all we did was hang out and go to the club and drink and stuff like that. Like that was it. This was pre-cell phones. So it wasn't no technology then.
Yeah, when
You,
you join the
you know,
army,
when you're a child, like you compromise everything. You lead a double
Mhm.
life as a child. You can't act at home the way that you would act with your friends if you got parents. So, like by default, You are compromising. Like, let your mama show up one day. You can be cussing, like I said, like she in the comments right now. You gonna act right. You know what I'm saying? Like, she might not catch you in person, but she gonna know about it, and you still gonna respect her because you know that's just that general connection. But like when you a child, man, you ain't got no choice but to lead a double life to learn the world. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You gotta know what's required of you, and you know what I'm saying in your role as a child, and you gotta know what your place is in the world too, because there's a hierarchy. If you leave a house acting like something that you're not, and it can get back to your mom or your parents, it's gonna get handled, you know what I'm saying, the way it comes to them. So like there's always a boundary for how far you willing to go, you know what I'm saying, before you risk putting yourself in an unhealthy compromise versus the safe compromise. You know what I'm saying? So everybody makes one every day. You know what I'm saying? And I, you know, when you think about it being called compromise, I think it's just more so emotional intelligence and restraint. The more you talk about it, it's knowing the fights that you can win. It's the difference between being right versus being righteous. You know what I'm saying? Like you can be right, but at what cost? So I think in compromising, it's picking your battles too. I think that's the most important part.
Yeah, when you join the army as a as a youngster, they issue you a liver just to be on the safe side.
If you a what?
A liver. You drink like a fish.
Sheesh.
Bro, I changed. I did a lot of stuff that I
All of
wasn't
us drink a lot.
supposed
Ooh.
to do.
Mama said she knew you was out there, bruh.
Bro, you know what? I'm
I
gonna
love it.
speak on it. I'm gonna speak on that.
Yeah.
I ain't gonna talk about me and her used to be me and her in club together before. I ain't gonna talk about that. But
That's not awkward.
He just sliding everybody on the
not
bus. On
then,
the
not
bus.
then. But I'm gonna tell you this, like,
I'm not believing it. Nope, not buying
like
it. If it don't come from her, I don't believe it.
Yeah, that's propaganda.
it propaganda, right?
Woo!
No, right. So, I wasn't always the best husband. Um, so I remember I remember a particular situation where I had I had went home. I was living out of town. I was married at the time, and um I would go to Virginia, right? And I would take my oldest son with me. And this was before we had cell phones. So I would put him to bed and then I'd leave and I go do do other stuff, right? And I remember my mom, she was like, Junior, you know better than that. She was like, you need to stop. She was like, and that was pretty much it. Like she knew that I was up to no good when I was out there. You know what I mean? And I remember that. I remember she was living in apartments over on the third floor. So she knows exactly what I'm talking about over in Ferncliff. But it was like that still, like, I still remember that moment, you know what I mean? Because I was compromising who I was and I was in her face doing exactly what she had taught me not to do. You know what I mean? And but now fortunately I've overcome a lot of those a lot of those decision making and things like that, but at that time, it was like, you know, it hit home then, but it didn't resonate. It wasn't enough to stop me. Um, but it's something that I always thought about. And like I said, that was me compromising who I was for another situation. What you got, Antoine or Coach or Chris?
I believe listen, there's levels of compromise, right? Because when you're a kid, you compromise differently than when you're an adult. But I believe there's comes a point where you don't compromise. You are who you are. You may adjust, make it work out, try to come together, find something in between. But you as a person, you're solid. You're done, right? Nobody's gonna come in and change you. They may give you different suggestions, different ways to go, but you're not changing us. I mean, a leopard sheds its hair, but it's still the same spots when it grows back, right? And I believe humans are like that. No one could change you. You change if you choose to change, you choose to do it differently, but you really didn't change as a person. I don't believe that. So I believe there's levels of compromise up to a certain age. That's how I see it.
I believe that compromise is necessary. Sometimes you have to give in order to get. Just as long as that compromise isn't going to hurt you in a negative way. That's how I view compromise. It's not really much to it as far as that goes. Maybe as we go further into this conversation, I can understand it a little deeper. But I just, like I said, taking myself out of this and bottom lining it, sometimes you have to compromise to get what you want or where you need to go. Sometimes it's necessary. You're muted.
With that being said, what are some situations where men may feel pressure to compromise their identity or their values?
When they making undisciplined sexual decisions, like I just wrote an acronym that I've been working on, and it's called SUDDEN. Sexually undisciplined dating decisions ending negatively. When have you ever made a healthy sudden decision? So when you think about like what people get caught up on at the lowest levels, lowest frequency levels, people compromise themselves for the wrong connections to the wrong people, whether it be friends, business, romance, whatever. Family too, because sometimes you connected to family for the wrong reason. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes you need to get away from them so you can grow, because they're not trying to have what you got. So I think that if you have a plan, you have to do a lot of compromise to stay on your plan, because people are gonna have an opinion about it if you let them know. So you're either gonna have to compromise by biting your tongue and not saying anything about what you got going on to maintain the integrity of what you got in play, or you have to just pick and choose when it's time to inform certain people. I think this is why I like the need to know. Everybody doesn't need to know every single thing that you got going on. Like, information should be given on a need to know basis so you can protect the integrity of whatever it is that you're, trying to execute. So I think a lot of times we miss the mark when we get off the purpose, when we get off of the design that makes our plan come to fruition. And in that case, we're making a lot of sudden decisions that are very impulsive, usually unhealthy, and a distraction, because you're looking for something to help you rebound and help you focus and stay on task. But in a lot of cases, I think a lot of people compromise themselves for the wrong types of relationships, whether it's business, romantic, or just platonic or familiar.
I believe I live my life on the need to know basis with everybody. I don't trust everybody, but everybody outside of my inner circle is on the need to know basis, except my family. They know everything, right? But I think that if you're looking to, you can't compromise who you are as a person, right? Because that person has to get to know who you are. You can't fake it till you make it and all that crap. It doesn't happen that way. You are who you are. You can compromise on certain things you will do at certain times, or certain decisions you will make at certain times. But at the end of the day, you are who you are. And I think if people live their life that way, authentically, you can't make bad news sound pretty. I always say it's still bad news, right? I don't care how I'm going to say it to you, as long as you get the message clearly, because I don't want you to walk away thinking, oh, did he mean this? Did he? No. I mean this, right? And I think too many people compromise how to say something, and it comes out wrong, and that person goes off and does something wrong, or doesn't really get it and then does it again. So it's a very touchy ground. You have to be very careful about that, because words are powerful, and there's meaning behind it, and they matter. Whew, do they matter?
I agree, Antoine. Words do matter. Thank you to everybody in the chat: Liz, Zay, Charlotte, Cam, Walter, everybody who's been in there. I appreciate you. Thank you for your comments and everything like that. Zay, well, actually, before I get to Zay's comment, there you go, Coach. I used to party hard when my kids left home and go to church on Sunday, so I was compromising who I was.
but she didn't say she parted with you.
Exactly.
You say the apple don't fall far.
Hey
Hey,
man, I got it. Nothing wrong with that. Mama got to live too.
hey, that's true. That's true. We had to do our dance together at the wedding last year too. That
That's
was
what's up.
fun. Yeah, man. Charlie, that's enough shine for you tonight. All right. We see you on Friday night. Hey, but back to the show, man. They said that, but you do change as a man if you really if you try to build and grow. Like, I want to know what you guys' perspective is. This is not here to rebuttal what Antoine was saying about men don't change and stuff like this. This is just to get a different perspective on it, if anyone has a different point of view about it.
Do you change as a man if you're trying to really build and grow? I think you have to. You can't build and grow without change. Like building and growth is change. So I think it's inevitable. Whether you think that you're the same person or not, that's up to you based on the choices. But how you're seen only is captured in how people assess your outcomes. So this is why, like, when we talk about growth, how can you talk about growth if you can't show your work? If you can't show your work, then we don't know what it is to gauge you off of, and what defines growth for you. Because subjectively, all of us think we're doing better than what we have been doing, but objectively, it may not look like anybody. You may not look like you've made progress to a certain demographic of people either. So it's no different than you ever drive around a place that's always getting the roads worked on and feel like it's always construction, and then one day the construction is completed, and then you're like, when did they stop? But because you've been driving and so desensitized to it that you didn't see that it was regular progress being made every day, and then when it was over with, you don't know how long ago it ended. So the point being is that growth and change happen whether you want to pay attention to it or not.
You got something, Coach? Oh, go ahead, Chris.
Do you change as a man if you're trying to really build and grow? Kind of think, just like Vic said, you kind of don't have a choice. You have to change because you're growing. The one thing that you can count on is change. That's just nature. So, yes. And this is why a lot of people view compromise as a bad thing. And it's not always. Like I said earlier, sometimes you have to compromise who you were to become who you are. And that's where the change comes into play when you're really trying to build and grow. When you build and grow, you kind of sacrifice, as Antoine said, a lot of the things that stopped you from getting to where you go, getting to where you are, getting you to where you plan on going. So yeah, you do change. But as a core, as a man at base level, you have to have standards and you have to have principles, and you can't compromise that. That's something
Exactly.
that needs to stay put. You understand what I'm
Yep.
saying? So, like I said, compromise it has a negative connotation because compromise is always thought of as I'm losing something. You understand what I'm saying? Instead of it being, all right, I might need to let this go to get here. And if it's if I'm supposed to have it, it'll come back anyway. So that's my 2 cents.
No, you're
Yeah,
right, because
I like
like I
it.
said, a
Yeah.
person's characteristics, his characteristics is developed into him becoming that adult. There's certain nuances that he does, certain things that he does. That's him. He's molded. All I'm saying is that that person's molded. I have certain characteristics, certain things that I'm passionate about. No compromising will ever change that. I will never change that part, nor would I want to change that part. Sometimes when you have to be the man who you are to keep what you have, and you're not going to compromise that for anybody. That's all I'm saying. There's certain things in you that are flatlined.
You mean like your core and your values?
Your
You're not
core, your
talking about
value, what
necessarily adjusting your
yeah,
lifestyle or something.
your
Okay.
core, your value, what molded inside of you, what makes you the man that you are. Those things will never change. You can suppress them, you can kind of hide them, but how you interact with people, the true values of what you were raised with, what you believe in, your deep beliefs, you're not changing that for anybody. And if somebody has that kind of power over you, whew, good luck in life.
Yeah, I mean, going back to the original question, what are some of the situations where men may feel pressured? I think that is the most important word in this in that question. And I got what everybody's saying about compromise, and I'm agreeing with most of it. But when you look at some situations where men are pressured, I'm just going to throw it out there. A lot of times, men feel pressured to compromise their identity or values when they're being told how to be a man from somebody who's not a man or never have been a man. That's one of the biggest problems that I have seen in this society. And I've talked about this, man, this probably about, God forgive me, it's probably about months ago. Um, you used to hear phrases, well, a real man would do, but it's coming from somebody who's not a man and was never trained to be a man. You see what I'm saying? So I think in situations like that, that's where you run into situations where men who are unaware or they're still learning or they're still growing and trying to discover authentic manhood, they are pressured by certain terms in society that make them feel that they need to do this in order to be a man, or do this in order to be considered a real man. Back to my man, excuse me. Back to my man question. I really like the question that he asked because I think it was I think the question that he asked was authentic for him. Do you compromise? And I want to make sure. Yeah, there you go. Do you change as a man if you're trying to really build and grow? Going back to Antoine's statement, I kind of agree with that to a certain extent. I think once you have those core values in place, then you kind of lean on those to get you to a certain point. Once you get to a certain point, you realize some of those core values need to evolve. I think somebody mentioned evolve in the chat. Those core values evolve, and then once they evolve, then sure, you're going to change some of those, but it's still going to have you on a growth pattern. So do you change? Sure, you're going to change, right? That's part of the cycle. That's part of the growth and development and evolution cycle. You're going to change come hook or crook. That's just what it is. Either you choose to change or life is going to change you, but something is going to happen. And COVID-19 is a perfect example. And then what you found is you look at some of these school systems, some school systems struggle to pivot when it came down to being able to, do curriculum online because they never prepped for it. But then on the other side of the coin, you had school systems that thrived in that environment. Why? Because they had already had it in place. And there was no excuse for no school system to not know how to do it because higher education has been doing it for years. And so if there was a blueprint, everybody should have been adopting the blueprint at least as a fail safe, just in case something was to happen. So back to the question, do you change as a man? Absolutely. You change as a man. You change as a woman. You change as a child. You change, period.
Yeah, and yeah, I like that, coach. I like everything that everybody has said. I think some other situation where men may feel pressure to compromise their identity, at least for me, is in the military. I saw a bunch of dudes, and including myself. We were taught certain ways to be as non-commissioned officers, and they was like, well, you got to be like this, and you have to be like this, and this is what you need to be. And I was like, man, this ain't really the type of person I am, saying to myself, but it was like, this is how I have to be in order to make it to the next level. And I think even something as simple as people who may take a lot of pride in their health and different things like that, they may not go to sick call to go get the help that they need because they don't want to be ridiculed and called certain names when they go back to unit for trying to do things to take care of themselves. So I just think that the military, I've seen a lot of situations, and like I said, including myself, where I was taught bad information that I passed along even to other NCOs and even some of my subordinates. I was compromising who I was on so many different occasions. You know what I mean? And I think that not only happens in the military, I think it happens in a lot of workplaces when guys are trying to move up the corporate ladder, when guys are trying to get on, when guys are trying to get recognized, when guys are trying to get this or trying to get that. A lot of times they'll compromise who they are, for the bag or for something else. So that's where I see men compromising themselves or
If you
feeling
have
the pressure to compromise.
if you have ambitions, you're gonna have to compromise because in your mind you got a plan that is linear. It's gonna be based off of the environment, the people you gotta interact with, and you can show up with your ambitions all day, and somebody's gonna say, I can help you, but I need this from you. You have to trade something. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is what I talk about, like trading work and being useful, having a skill, being of service. You know, you have to, all of this is submit. Compromise is just submission to, like, you submitting to the environment. You don't all the time have every single resource. Sometimes it takes people, sometimes it takes money, sometimes it takes structure. If you don't have structure, but you know the people and you got the money, you can probably still access whatever it is that you're trying to, you know what I'm saying, get to. But you have to have something to trade. And hopefully the thing that you have to trade isn't your dignity, because you can get anything, you know, with almost anything. But understand something. To get something you never had, you got to do something you never done. And you don't know who's on that path. So you may have to compromise something. Now, the whole point of what to compromise is it your standards? It's your dignity? It's a mixed bag. If you work for someone, if you have a job, you compromise something about yourself daily. Whether it is that, like, you want to get up on time, or you slap your alarm 4 or 5 times, or whatever it is, you still compromise with, like, I got to go get this check. I got priorities. You compromise because your priorities say you got to compromise if you're responsible. So, like, I think compromise is just the way of a responsible adult.
You know,
I think like but you see, I guess I live my life differently than all of you, because I go into everything not caring what you think. You don't serve a purpose in my life. Unless you serve a purpose in my life, you're within my circle. But I go into everything not caring what you think, because I'm on a mission to fulfill what I've got to do. I don't know you. I probably won't break bread over a dinner table with you, but I will do it if it serves a purpose to me, right? Because my time is money and my life is money. And the people I interact with are the people I want to interact with. That's why I live my life that way. My phone only rings. There's everybody that has a name is in my phone. If your number doesn't come up with a name, I don't really care. I don't pick it up. If I'm interacting with you, Tom, Dick, and Harry says this, I don't let that trigger me, because I don't know you. There's nothing you can say. I'm still getting paid tomorrow, and I'm still going to produce work tomorrow. So I think young adults today need to go into everything not caring what people think of them, because they don't know them. No one should have that power over you, right? Now, if you're interacting with that person, you develop a relationship with that person, or you develop some kind of rapport with that person, fine, you got to take his opinion for what it's worth. The 2 weeks you know him, the 2 years you know him, or the lifetime you know him. But don't go into something, oh, I care what this person, oh, I care. Then you're becoming an emotional idiot, because you're forgetting who you are as a man. You're forgetting who you were, how you were raised. Don't let that person have that kind of power over you. No one, anybody that can tell you you're an idiot. Are you? No, you know you're not, but you shouldn't go into that. That's all I'm saying. The only thing that matters to me, the people I know. I have a lot of acquaintances, but I have family and friends. But the acquaintances, you can't care about what everybody is saying. That's all I'm saying. Your core values are you. You know who you are as a person. So you go into it not caring what other people think. They're allowed an opinion. They're supposed to have an opinion. I don't even care if they don't like me, because I don't know you enough for you to like me. And that's how people need to understand. What level are you talking to? Who are you talking to? And compromise is a sacrifice, because you're giving up something for something. You're compromising a certain situation for it to benefit you. That's all. That's how I see it.
What was you gonna say, Coach?
no, I was gonna kind of caveat off of Vic, because I like the fact he mentioned the job thing, that you kind of you kind of compromise something about yourself for the sake of a job. And this is why one of the things I teach people is that when it comes down to a job, you go to an interview, they're interviewing you for a job, but you should also be interviewing them to see if they fit who you really are. That it's not just a one-way interview. You're interviewing whoever's interviewing you as well, so that you can see that this is going to be a symbiotic relationship. I applied for the job, therefore I wanted the job. If I'm chasing a dollar, then now they got power over me, kind of like what Antoine was saying, right? But if I'm looking for something that's more fulfilling, and that thing which is fulfilling also happen to pay me pretty good, then it's not so much as I am compromising per se. We're establishing a relationship. Therefore, in this relationship, we're doing things that feed one another. So in essence, I am giving you my skills and you're giving me money for the skills that I bring forth. So that's one of the things I try to teach people early on, right? Don't put yourself in a position to where you dread going to work every day. Like if you find the right position that suits who you are, then what you will find is that you will enjoy going to work and you will enjoy getting paid for the work that you do, and it won't even feel like work.
Yep. That's
If
facts.
you're passionate about what you're doing, you're not gonna be in positions where you have to compromise yourself too. It's like Antoine as an artist, he don't have to answer to nobody. It is whatever it is he produces. You know what I'm saying? It comes out of his head. I understand. Like he don't need to take input from anybody on the thing that he does. But when you speaking objectively and you have to lead other people, you have to make decisions on behalf of an organization based on the people that you have to work with. There's a lot of compromise. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of work that goes into leading and motivating people and being convincing, being persuasive in a healthy way where you empower the other person, empowering perspectives, you know.
Hey, at
Oh.
least it wasn't me this time.
Yep, it wasn't you this time. Vic might have
Was it
locked
me?
up. You just
Oh,
talk
they
good,
got
he'll
him.
come back.
They
Hey,
got him.
Antoine, I'm gonna drop him out.
I got the good internet today.
Hey, we need to screenshot that picture of him. Man, you dropped him. We should have screenshot the picture of him.
Yeah,
First,
Oh, and that is going all the way now. Man, yeah, we should have. No, Antoine, I wanted to go back to something that you said. You said the compromise is sacrifice.
Yeah.
I think yes, but not all the time. I think compromise can be sacrificed, but I don't think it has to be sacrificed every time. You
Well,
know, and
give me something
huh?
tangible. Give me something tangible.
You
Hold on.
you compromised having a family to do your art. I don't think that's
So that
a
was a sacrifice.
you
That was
think
a
you said that was a sacrifice?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I sacrificed that part. That I sacrificed that part of me as a person to achieve my goals. I sacrificed that part. I was willing to give it up.
Yeah.
Right. I didn't compromise with anything. It was a decision I made that I sacrificed to say, okay, you know what? I'm not going to be that struggling artist. I'm gonna have what I want to have in life. Like I said, and I said it from day one, I took it to the extreme, and I don't recommend that for anybody.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a sacrifice I made.
Okay.
Yeah. But give me something like what you're talking about. Maybe I'm missing the picture, you know, like
I just
what
don't
would be
think
a compromise?
like what we've been saying is like you don't necessarily have to compromise something. Compromise don't have to be a negative thing. I think you can compromise without it necessarily being a sacrifice. So like because like I want to go to McDonald's and my wife want to go to Burger King, right? Well, I'm compromising by
Oh
going
yeah.
where she want to go, but it ain't really a sacrifice.
Like you
Right.
still
You know what I
getting a
mean?
burger
So I
at the end
think
of the day.
still getting a
Yeah.
burger at the end of the day. I just
Right.
compromise where I want to go.
Right. Okay.
But I don't really look at it as a sacrifice. I'm just like, well, whatever. So, but
No,
I
no.
do think that it absolutely can be a huge sacrifice. You know what I mean? I do think that it can be a sacrifice as well.
Well, that's why I said there's levels to it, depending
Yeah.
on what there's levels to it. You're right. You're absolutely right. There's certain things I will compromise with, but
Yeah.
I'm just saying when it comes to major decisions, life-changing decisions that take me off my path, I ain't compromising.
Yeah.
I'm not even entertaining the thought, right? Because you're not going to have that power over me. You can beg, scream, not going to happen. Because I know me as a man, because I wouldn't feel happy knowing I did it, right? So you wouldn't get the joy of me, of who I am, because I made such a big sacrifice. And I'm pissed. And I'll always resent you for that, right? Borderline hate. You know, people say, "Oh, it's not good to hate." No, I'm very capable of hating. I don't mind hate. Hate is a good thing because hate could get me out of trouble. Hate can make me avoid your ass, right? So I'm okay with hate. When people, that's how I see it, right? Because I live my life as a black and white. I don't have a gray area because a gray area means I have to think about something. It's either you like me or you don't. And if you have to think about it, then we're not going to get along anyways because I'm not going to wait there long enough for you to make a decision because I'm going to go, right? but it keeps me out of trouble. That's all I'm saying. Some people are like that. So compromise on everyday minuscule things, yeah, sure, I could do that. But compromise on things that matter, that could be life-changing or that could be life-altering, nah, that's not happening.
Yeah. Like if you tell your girl, look, you can't have no other man.
Oh yeah, I
You
mean,
ain't compromising on that.
nah, I mean, if my girl breathes in another man's direction, we're done. And listen, you need to give me that time to heal. So pack up and leave quick, right? Because it's my house, so you don't contribute nothing to the rent or mortgage. And I believe that, because why would I stay and resent you for it? I got to get on with healing so I could start producing again, right? I think anybody that lingers around like a perfume is ridiculous.
Not
Because
perfume.
you know what I mean?
What was you going to say, Christopher?
Nothing.
You sure?
Yeah, man. You kind of covered it. Like sometimes compromise can be a negative thing, and sometimes compromise and sacrifice are synonymous. It just depends on the situation and how you go about it and how you think about it. And as long as that compromise and that sacrifice isn't, like I said, it's not something that has something to do with like your core, like what you stand for, and how you're supposed to move. As long as you're not compromising that, I see no issue with the word. You understand what I'm saying? Because everything is equivalent exchange. You got to give something up to get something. You got to make room for whatever you got coming your way. So it just that's just nature. So that's
You
my
should
thought.
know. You should know what you're sacrificing for. I want
Yeah.
to. I want to make sure I'm stressing that. And I apologize. I don't know what's going on today. You should know what you're sacrificing for. If I give up something, then there should be a greater gain someplace down the road. I'm not going to get it right now, which is what compromise is. If I'm compromising, I am giving up something small for something else that meets us in the middle, right? Just like the perfect example you gave. You still get a burger, right? But when it comes down to sacrifice, I'm going to give up something now for something bigger later on down the road. It's just like investing. You're giving up a portion of your hard-earned money now for retirement later. So if I don't know what the thing is later, I'm not sacrificing for it. That's the key. And if for whatever reason you feel or you're being pressured to sacrifice not knowing what the thing is that you're sacrificing for, that's not a sacrifice. You're being robbed. I'm sorry.
And I'm
But
over here.
on something quick though, Darkfield.
Go ahead.
On something quick you said before, I also agree with you. I will tell anybody the same thing. Don't go into something half-ass, right? Go into something when you're whole, because then you know who you are, right? Don't go into something still developing. Make sure you go into something, anything. Make sure you do something whole. That's all. Don't go into a half-ass. That's all I'm saying.
I like it. What about situations where like what are some of the consequences of what happens when men start to compromise their identity of values?
You become for sale. You become a prostitute, pretty much. Like you like the lowest bidder. You know what I'm saying? Like your stock value becomes low. People can kind of already know what to expect from you, and you're gonna work for the lowest dollar amount. You know what I'm saying? Or you're gonna what you're gonna end up doing is putting yourself on a bargaining table. You're gonna always be for sale. Your dignity is always for sale. Like you're gonna be a bottom feeder. That's the fastest way to get to the bottom and stay there. It's a low frequency outcome in most cases. Nobody else want to add on to it? You just thinking about it? What's up?
Like there's nothing else to add. Like when you compromise when you compromise your core values, you lose your value. Because you've already compromised it to get whatever you got.
Like if you want to go do OnlyFans right now, I ain't got nothing else to say to you. You know what I'm saying? Like if you like we're not gonna talk about that because like I'm gonna speak when I'm spoken to, but you can't start no conversation about what you used to do on OnlyFans. I don't want to hear it. You know what I'm saying? I'm not interested at all. So like that automatically says, you know what I'm saying, where the threshold is for how far you're willing to have a conversation with somebody. That's the boundary.
Yeah, you shouldn't sacrifice your identity. I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, you only got one. You know, don't sacrifice your identity for anything. It shouldn't be that way.
But here's the other side of that. Sometimes you have to sacrifice the identity you live in to acquire the identity you're supposed to have as a man.
Add
You
context
understand
to
what I'm
that.
saying? So, and that's a part of growth. That's a part of growth, and that's a part of development as a man. So that's why I always say, man, compromise isn't always a bad thing.
No.
You understand what I'm saying? It's not always a bad thing.
Like
A
I
lot of
said,
folks,
there's levels to it, right?
Yeah.
You should never compromise your identity, who you are, your values, your core. It's called a core for a reason. Okay, you want to make compromise on certain decisions you have to make, sure, but it shouldn't change you as a person. It shouldn't stop you from moving forward and excelling. What you're only going to resent that decision you make later on. You know, that's all I'm saying. Desperation is not an attractive trait. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but that's a fact. That's all I'm saying. So you compromise on things you do with people, decisions you make, blah, blah, blah. Yes. But you don't compromise the core, the development of who you are as a man, the solid decisions you make towards life. Because you have to stand by something, right? If I know a guy can't stand by his word and he's shifting because he shifts like a chameleon to each person he talks to. I mean, why am I doing business with that guy? That means he's only telling me what I want to hear. That's all.
but I understand what you're saying. But on the flip side of that, you can have a man that, and this is a lot of us, you can have a man that was so used to being a chameleon and compromising who he was to get what he wanted, and then he decided to stand on a square and stick on standing on that square and become a different person, changing his identity. You see what I'm saying? So it is situational, but
It's not
there's
going to happen
also another
overnight.
side of it. There's also another side of the coin.
Yeah, but it's not going to
You
happen
understand
overnight.
what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So,
But that's not going to happen overnight. Just
and
because
that's another thing that I wanted to touch on when it comes to you compromising your core values. That's going to be a part of your reputation. That's how people are going to see you. And no matter what you do, they're going to always see you as that guy. So that's another thing that you have to deal with. And it does take time. It does take time to get people to understand that you're not the same person you were, because you grew up and you understood that what you was doing really, it was getting you places, but it wasn't getting you to where you were supposed to be. It was just getting you to where you wanted to be at that particular moment, because you were thinking in survival instead of thinking longevity. You see what I'm saying? Like, there's so many components to this. There's just a lot of components to this.
Yeah. Because sometimes we use compromise and sacrifice interchangeably, and I don't think that they're the same word. Because, like, generally speaking, when you sacrifice, you're giving up something that you already have, and most times it's comfort. Most times it's a level of entitlement. You know what I'm saying? A false sense of entitlement. And then you have to go make a hard right decision about your life and challenge yourself. You know what I'm saying? So you could stay on the couch and lazily approach life and probably live a life where you don't really produce anything, but nobody's mad at you either. They may be disappointed in you, but you'll sacrifice, like for that comfort. But when you make the hard right decision and sacrifice, you're submitting to something that you have to do in order to get to the next level. So, like, if you are a pro athlete or you have dreams to be a pro athlete, you have to sacrifice sleep. You have to sacrifice, having the last word. You have to be able to be coachable, receptive. You're gonna be out of bounds a lot. You're gonna be called wrong a lot. So you have to sacrifice, like being right with yourself in order to be coached to a level of greatness. You know what I'm saying? And then in compromise, it's more of negotiating equity in the outcome. Like, you both want something, when it comes down to compromise. Like, if we want elevated dialogue, to be the best show possible, then we have to manage our ego. So we have to compromise, in a healthy way for the betterment of the platform, correct? So each one of us can take any situation and run down a rabbit hole 1,000 different ways with it. But the goal is to create a conversation that the audience can learn from and feel comfortable engaging us and trusting us to, feel their conversations or questions with a level of objectivity that doesn't make them feel like they're asking dumb questions, doesn't make them feel like they're not getting anything out of it. You know what I'm saying? Because they're sacrificing their time to watch us have a good conversation. So they don't have to sacrifice anything. They can move on. They can not pay us any attention. And shout out to everybody that's in the chat, that engages with us weekly. You guys sacrifice to come participate and push the platform forward. And we appreciate that because you don't even have to be here. That's sacrifice, But when it comes down to compromise, you're negotiating, So like in this situation, we have something to trade with our viewers, and they have something to trade with us. So we compromise in some way, shape, or form. I think it's a matter of which end of the perspective that you're on. I think it's a matter of experience, and I don't think that it is. I don't think it's as fluid for some as it is for others. But that's why, like, hey man, all things are true. If somebody gonna feel like they're sacrificing on one side, somebody feel like they're compromising on the other, and somebody in the middle feel like they just negotiate. So it's a matter of what you're trying to get out of it. If it's a healthy outcome, hopefully it's for that reason.
But we have to agree that, okay, these people are watching and they don't have to be here. You know what? But they're here because they know they get something out of it. Don't think that they're just not here for entertainment. A lot of them are here and they probably get something out of it. A lot of the young men that watch this probably get something out of it. They're here for a reason too. Sure, they're here for the laughs and the entertainment and the knowledge, but they're getting something out of it. I'm just saying like this. I know there's a certain level I want to be in life, and I'll probably be working there till I'm dead, right? And something comes into my life. I'm not going to compromise that to stop me from getting my goal, because that's already established in my mind, mentally, physically. It's already a vision. It's planted. It's cemented. There's nothing that could take me off that path, right? Unless life throws me a curve. That's called life, but it's not throwing. So nothing should come into your life to take you off your path, because finding your path is a life's journey for some people. So now that I know I found it, the only thing I'm good at is drawing, and the only thing I want to be good at is art, right? So nothing could come in and compromise that, like disrupt it. But I'm able to look and make a decision about it, and if I want to sacrifice a little bit of time to give it attention, yes. I'm just saying that people, when you have a certain goal, you shouldn't be desperate to get there. What are you desperate for? That's what you set forth in front of you. Now you got to be willing to work your ass off to get there, which is, we all can agree, is hard work. Vic doesn't go out and buy a big building without securing the funds and making the deal. And he plans, he sacrificed certain things in certain corners of other deals to make that deal happen. I'm pretty sure we all have done that. But it should not be a desperation. No, you will get it anyways. And there shouldn't be anything to come and disrupt you from that.
Can you refresh my memory on the question you asked? Because I think we kind of went a little off.
What are some of the consequences or compromising? What are some of the consequences of compromising your identity or values?
For me, some of the consequences is, initially, not necessarily having a clear destination. But again, I think, Antoine, you said it, to where my core values should lead me down a particular path and I don't compromise those. But then if I compromise those, then it takes me off of that path and put me on another path. And then somebody come and presents another idea, then it takes me off that path and put me on another path, right? The Bible tells us that a double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. So with that being said, you have to have some type of mindset, some type of idea of where it is you're trying to go in your life. Initially, your core values will start you along that path. And then as you progress along that path, that becomes more defined. No one knew that I would be sitting here on the Unkle Junior Network today when I was 15 years old. So I can go back to my core values, but my core values didn't put me here. What I would tell you is that my core values got me on this path. Somebody put in the chat, you got to be able to hit the curve bar. Absolutely. because life is not a straight line. It is a bunch of curves and zigzag and all kind of other stuff. And you have to be flexible enough to what you have. You have to have the mental agility to go with the ebbs and flow of this lifelong journey. It's not a clear cut path. So my core values, even though they don't change holistically, they begin to expand and so forth and so on. Because I would tell you, years ago, I was very rash. I mean, there was no filter when it came to this mouth right here. But that's my family. Like, if you ever met my family, like, they don't bite their tongue. They're very straightforward. But on the other side, we have very authentic and real relationships. Like, either we're in relationship or we're not. That's it. There is no confusion when it comes down to people in my family. Now I am still that way, but I'm not as rash as what I used to be, and that's just an example. And so when you look at some of these things, some of the consequences are, you may have a person who really don't have a clear path on what it is they want to do with their life. They can be in their 40s and may not even have a career, not necessarily know what they want out of life, out of relationships, things of that nature. The other side of that coin is when it comes down to those consequences. I also think that you will adopt the identity of the person that influences you the most. And I think that's another dangerous thing. You have a bunch of copycat people out there, and what they do is they find a person that they want to be like, and then they try to emulate what they're doing. Well, what Uncle Junior is doing is not necessarily what I'm doing. What Chris is doing is not necessarily what I'm doing. So if I try to follow Chris, Uncle Junior, Antoine, or Vic, then the only thing I'm doing is trying to mirror them, but I may fail at it because that's not necessarily what I'm called to do. So I think when you look at it from that perspective, you'll find it's a whole bunch of consequences that exist in there for compromising who you are as a person, compromising your identity, or not even having a mind open enough to realize that who I think I am at this point in time may not necessarily be the whole picture.
Man, all y'all have some great points. Let me say this, and then you can go, Chris. I think some of the consequences of compromise your identity and values is when you see a lot of guys that's in jail because they was doing something that someone put them up to do. How many times have we had where a woman have said, "Hey, go beat this person up or go do X, Y, and Z for me," and now these guys are in jail. That's not who they are. You know what I mean? Or maybe it is who they are. Part of that, I'm not, now that I'm talking it out and thinking about it a little bit more, some of that is some of their values and who they are, because if you grow up a certain way and this is what you're taught. But if you didn't grow up that way, you still maybe have taught with the mindset that I have to protect a certain I had to protect, I may have to protect women in my family. That may be what I was taught growing up. And then now I listened to one, and then now I pulled the trigger, I've done something, and then now I'm in jail because of that. So I just think that, men sacrifice themselves sometimes. We hit on it a little bit for family because of a certain family code or something like that, to where it's not really who they
Blind
are at their
loyalty.
heart. But there you go, blind loyalty. So now dudes are in situations because they listen to somebody. You know what I mean? So that's what happens when you compromise who you are to the core, and I think in those situations, you have to be able to stick up. Everybody may not be there. But sometimes, if you are listening and you are the type of guy who can stick up for yourself in those situations, you have to stick up for yourself. Like, you can't sit there and, make a decision what someone else thinks you should do. And then now you end up in a bad situation just because you got some unrealistic, like, what did you say again, Chris? What was that word you used?
Before which one?
The one you just said. You said something. Now I can't think of what it was.
Said blind loyalty.
A blind
Blind
loyalty.
loyalty.
Yeah.
Yeah, just because of that. A
So
lot
when
of
you're
people
doing
in jail
something
just
just because
of
somebody
blind
holds a
loyalty.
position in your life.
Yeah, exactly. So that's definitely compromising. I think compromise your identity and your values.
But see, it all boils down to losing your value as a person when you compromise your values to do something. Once you compromise it, it's like you've already given it away. So what's the point of them treating you like you have any value anyway when you're just going to give it away at the first opportunity that you think is going to push you forward for that short span of time?
Give us an example, sir.
Garfield brought it up. Men making this decision based off of blind loyalty and going to jail. Now you have no value. Your value is tied to whatever the state decides your value is. You've compromised your value because you did something dumb because you thought that you had to do it because of some blind loyalty. You know what I'm saying? It and that's about the realest example that I can think of, because it's present and you see it all the time. These kids or you know what I'm saying, or just people in general just making a dumb decision based off of who they with and trying to fit in, or based off of who they're related to, and trying to uphold this unhealthy blind loyalty code that most families try to portray. You understand what I'm saying? They make a dumb decision based off of that, and then here you are at the state's beck and call. So now the state can determine what you're worth. And now you in jail working a job making 1.5 cents a day that somebody out on the streets getting paid $30 an hour to do. You understand what I'm saying? You just lost your value.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
I think in general, when we say words mean things, right? And then if actions speak louder than words, then what is it that you do? Because what you do is eventually who you are. And when they see what you do, there's always that one thing that can just come through and negate everything that you did before. Like I saw an IG clip where this guy got caught up in, like one of those To Catch a Predator episodes. And he basically caught this this man who'd been married for 35 years soliciting a 14-year-old for inappropriate relationship. And then they made the people that caught him call his wife. And the guy was having he was like, well, they caught me. I really thought the guy was 18. That's not the answer. You know what I'm saying? In no situation. But in that, because I think Adrian asked, do you ever rebound, from certain situations? I do think that there are some that you just cannot rebound from, though. I think that if you get in a situation where you're making a sexually undisciplined decision and it involves, something, a nefarious activity in the wrong context, I don't think you get a chance to get back from certain things. I think if you go after minors and children, and defense, if you have predatory behavior, you compromise a lot to make your predatory behavior a priority, right? So people that move with a level of predatory energy, they don't deserve to come back. You just can't. There's just certain things that you can't do that afford you redemption. Amongst a popular opinion, that's up to you. You got to find it the way you can get it, but generally speaking, there are some things that you just can't come back from after you make a certain decision.
And also, I want to say, you're right, but I want to say that, listen, you can come back. All right. You have a chance to come back, but you always have to start with, I'm not that person anymore. You have to own what you did.
Can a pedophile come back?
A pedophile is sick. He should never be let out in the first place. But that's me. I'm the guy that wants the dick of a pedophile to be cut off, and that's his punishment. But that's me. Nobody else is that cruel.
That's the only point that I was making. Is some things you can come back from.
But I'm just saying, like, that's besides the pedophile and something that's a sickness and something that needs to be treated and you'll probably never get over. If you begin every sentence owning what you did, if you committed murder, you don't make an excuse for it. You were gangbanging, you don't make an excuse for it. Whatever you decide to do, as long as you start the sentences with, I'm not that person anymore. Yes, I was that person, but I'm turning over a new leaf. And no matter what temptation comes into your life, you're trained and you're hoping to walk away from it, no matter what desperation comes your way, right? That's the first step in coming back from what you've been through, because nobody's going to give you a chance unless you own it. And if you hide it, they're going to find out. So I believe the first step is owning what you did, even if you were an abusive man, whatever the thing is, or you are 3 or 4 in the past, you have to own it. But you have to also say, I'm not that person anymore. And I made that change and I'm just looking for that chance moving forward. If that person wants to give you a chance, so be it. If they don't, you can't beat yourself up about it. You got to move on to the next person. That's all I'm saying. There's got to be some level of redemption, right? And I'm the same guy that believes, yeah, you know what? You do me harm, you kill somebody in my family, I'm gonna kill you. But let's be real. Only God has the will of taking life, right? None of us on earth. You know, He's doing the last judgment of all. So yeah, I'm gonna go there. But other than that, we really don't. Even though we have free will to do it, I just believe there's got to be some form of redemption to step back into the light. Because what are you gonna do? End up on the street homeless? Nobody's gonna give him a chance. That's a hard one. That's a hard one. That's all I'm saying.
Got it.
Let the
Go ahead,
record show. Let the record show that Antoine made a God reference.
Coach, Coach, how you gonna hold me to that, Coach? Coach,
Hey man, you my dude, man. You my dude.
man, Coach, you know,
Hey,
Coach, be on my
it's
side.
true though. Hey, thank you again to the chat. Hey, appreciate everybody. Hit the like button, the share button, all those good things. Really, really, really appreciate you. If you're enjoying the conversation, go over there, put a 1 in the chat. We're gonna continue on. I also put a poll up there. So if y'all see the poll up there, feel free to
Where? Oh, I'm on
in the
the
chat. It's on YouTube.
I'm
Don't worry about
changing. I'm not getting out of my seat.
Yeah. One of the things that we run into every single day with somebody is relationships, whether that's with a woman, whether that's with a coworker, whether that's with our parents, our family, friends, and blah, 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 blah. So how do you balance, that need to please other people while still like trying to stay true to yourself and your values? So how do you guys balance all of that stuff going on? Because someone had mentioned code switching in the chat, and I think what's going to happen is some of those guys are going to come back. Somebody's driving. So actually, you know what? Actually, what I'm saying, let me find it real quick, real switch, because Bowden Driven EP, Mr. TMI, Natasha, over there, go over there and check them out, see what they got going on. I put the link out there. Also, all the information to all our platforms will be in the description. But one of the things they talked about was if you have ever code switched for corporate America, and copycatting and stuff like that. So code switching for the job. And they talked about so they may come back in the chat and add something to this conversation. But just in general, man, what do you guys feel about and think about as far as balancing, all of that stuff, in your life and stuff like that?
You don't.
The need to please other people and
I
stand true to
don't.
yourself.
You don't. You
I
don't.
don't like. I don't care about pleasing other people. Like I care about executing what I got planned, and if the right people are around me, they are going to either align with it, support it, or one thing they won't do is put me in a defensive space. So that's on me, like on how I execute my plan, and how much resources required, because a lot of times people have opinions on something that they're not funding. So I don't care if they're not putting any money up, and like one of my own phrases is, I don't take constructive criticism from people that never constructed anything. So that's to keep me, dialed into who I can talk to, who I can vet certain information with, because you can't talk to everybody about everything. And I think within this, I think it's just another elaborate conversation about how much more refined your boundaries have to be when you start compartmentalizing what's important to discuss in the open and what's more important to discuss in private. And it's about reading the room. It's about just going where you celebrate it. So you don't have to be in a situation where you feel like you got to compromise anything. But in the event that you have to do a little bit more compromising or sacrifice, you still have healthy enough boundaries and a healthy enough support system where you can reference like how you will be held accountable, because if you have value in other places, you don't want to taint your value either, especially if you're a leader and you're responsible for other people. And I think that there's degrees to, what's compromised for some, sacrifice for others, what's dignified for some, and what's, I guess, compromising of identity for others. I think it varies. And I think the other part is too, that we lose sight of is that we are not a monolithic people. We have different ways to solve the same problem with different logic. So what looks like compromise for somebody else may look like the way forward for somebody else. Just like how many times have we been in a conversation where we talk to young men and they are very inquisitive about some of the stuff that we've accomplished, and we tell them how we did it, and then when we tell them how we did it, they're not interested in hearing, you know what I'm saying, like, putting themselves in the same position to take those same opportunities. They don't see it as an opportunity. They see it as something else that's just going to hold them up. They see it as something that they're going to compromise. And I think, like, if anybody's a first responder and guys like us that are veterans, the Army wasn't the first option. It was like the second to last option before we went and did something that we didn't have any business doing, because in this culture, the demographic of men that we represent don't join the military out of patriotism. We join out of resources. We join out of a fair trade, for our time, up until a point where it's either costing us too much physically or we missing opportunities that we can benefit from in a healthier way. I think sacrifice, compromise, and staying true to your values is relative to how much of criticism that you can afford.
See, that's where I come in with, I believe the question was, how do you balance to please others and all that, right? Am I right? What's written on the screen? You're muted.
Yes. How do you balance the need to please others
Okay.
with the need to stay true to yourself and your values?
And that's why I go into everything not caring about what other people think or to please them. I'm going in there for a purpose because I want to be there, right? And if I can help you, I will. But it's a choice I'm making. I wouldn't sacrifice nothing going into that, because I'm making a choice to please others. Why would I please others? What have they done for me? What are you being specific about? Something, family? It all depends, right? But you don't go into anything trying to please another person. You can't change what other people do. You can't make people do what they don't want to do. And you shouldn't put yourself in a situation where you have to please someone. Like, I mean, why would you do that? Right? That's exactly why I go into everything not caring. I go into it if I want to go into it. I go where I'm wanted, where I'm needed. I have no problem not going where I'm not needed. So I would encourage every man to do that. Every young man to do that. Don't go in trying to please anybody. Anybody. Because that only compromises your own inner core, inner beliefs, inner balance, what you believe in. Because now you got to kind of, sometimes you have to lower yourself to put yourself into that position. That's how I see it.
I don't compromise. I
There you go.
think when it comes down to it, people pleasing, when we understand what people pleasing is more so of a fear response. You want to be accepted, so you just seek to please this person, and then you end up trying to please this person, and so forth and so on. But again, when I have a clear picture of what it is that I'm working on, what it is, who I am, what my goals in life are, what my values are, then those people who align with those goals and those people who align with those values are the people that I'm connected with. It's not that I dislike these people or whatever, but it's just that, we're on a different path, and that's okay. So you have to get to the point to where you have a healthy perspective of how you view other people's opinion. It's not a bad thing that you don't agree with me. In fact, I'm okay. That's why I consider myself to be a perspective thinker. I'm okay with people who don't agree with me, as long as you agree with some type of rationale. If your initial response is "I feel," conversation is already over. So, with that being said, people pleasing again is more so of a fear response. So I don't balance fear response with reality, because in most cases, when it comes down to a fear response, it is based upon some imagined perspective of what could possibly happen, as opposed to what the facts are telling you is going to happen. As long as I am moving in the direction of the goals that I've established for myself, and I'm accomplishing milestones en route, then there's a high probability that the end game that I am looking forward to will come about. So, simple answer: I don't balance.
Chris?
I'm with everybody else. Like, I don't listen, man. We have an oath. I I will help you. I will compromise for you as long as it does not hurt me. in the process. You understand what I'm saying? But trying to please somebody and trying to balance me living the way that I'm supposed to live and understanding my core values and walking in my core values and my core standards and making you happy, if I have to compromise one for the other, no, there's nothing good that can come from that. So I'm with everybody else. No, I don't compromise. Absolutely not.
And I hate to add more bad news to the whole conversation. Even if we're in a relationship, there are some things that are non-compromisable.
100% agree.
Do we want to ask what?
Do we have
No.
enough time?
Yes, we do. I want to know.
Non-negotiables in
It's why you
relationships.
want to know.
Hey,
Two,
4
thi-
words.
two things to understand. Number one, we ain't in a relationship. No, I'm joking.
There you go. Rule number 2, refer back to rule number 1.
There you go. But seriously though, we are in a relationship. I want to make sure I
Mhm.
say that because
Yeah.
too many times a lot of people hear the word relationship and they automatically think about two people of the opposite sex. No,
Mhm.
right? Men are in relationship with men, like the men that they're close to, like their wolf pack, right? You're in a
Mhm.
relationship with those dudes. So when it comes down to things like that, there are some things within the scope of that relationship that are non-compromisable, and we have to understand that. So yeah, I agree. I'm just saying. Um, Even with somebody of the opposite sex, we could be living together, getting ready to get married, and all that stuff. There are some things I'm just not going to compromise on, and you will know that up front. So when that situation comes, I'm just going to look at you like, I hear you, but we already had this discussion.
Let me ask you guys, each and every one of you,
Go ahead.
Oh
wherever you are
shit.
in life, whatever you're doing, wherever you are, would you compromise your passion, what you do, what you love to do, for the sake of anyone, even if it's the one you love?
No.
Okay.
No.
That's
Uh,
my
Like
answer.
like the reason we have the relationships with
Hold on,
the
I want to hear Chris and
Yeah, go ahead,
Coach's
Chris. Yeah.
answer first.
I think the real question should be, would somebody that you love want you to compromise what you're doing?
No, because I'm saying if they're not in your life yet, and even if they're in your life, I'm saying for where you are in life, doing the person you are, all the developing, all the growth you've done, would you compromise your passion, the mission you're on, even if you're not there yet? Would you compromise that for anybody?
Well, I think
And I guess Antoine is saying it don't necessarily have to be stated to you.
Yeah, it's just
right.
that it's just that you're on a mission. You know what mission you're on. Would you compromise it for anybody?
Right, but to Chris' points, and brother, I'm not trying to answer for you. I think I have an understanding of what you're saying. Like somebody I'm with, they already know what my passion is in the beginning. That's part of the agreement of me. That's like me marrying a woman that has a child. This is my baby. My baby is my goal, my dream, my destination, my calling. So that comes with me. If I marry a woman that already has a child, the child comes with her. So when I marry her, I'm accepting that child as my child as well. I think it is the same thing. However, comma, I also want to add this to the context. If your name is Tom Brady and you lose your wife because you just want to keep playing football, I think at some point there has to be a cutoff. Like Tom was no longer
And
playing
that was my
football for the
point.
money. Right.
And that was my point.
Exactly.
Who gets to decide what the cutoff is?
Well, we decide. That's a conversation piece.
Why
Mm,
do we get to decide now? Why is it I was going for my passion, my passion is non-negotiable, but now at a certain point,
Well, no,
why now? I
well,
guess what I'm saying is this,
mhm,
like you said, you knew I'm a football player.
mhm,
You knew I'm Tom Brady. You know this is what I do.
mhm.
So now why is it that because why is there even a conversation if I decide that I want to go back and play? Why is there even a conversation when you knew day one I'm the football player?
Well, at some point there has to be a means to an end. Like I enjoy what I'm doing, but I don't see
Mm-hmm.
myself doing this until I'm 95 years old. You
Mm-hmm.
see what I'm saying? Now, sure, it will evolve into something where I'm helping other people to do these things, but that's not a full-time job. That's more so of a mentorship program, right?
Mm-hmm.
But at some point, as I get older, it's going to be like, okay, I've done all this. There's not like in his perspective, there's nothing more for me to gain. I've won several Super Bowls. I got more money you can shake a stick at. At some point, it's just me playing child's game, right? And don't get me wrong, I love it, but why can't I love it from a different perspective now? Why do I have to be on the field? And then there's another story that goes along with it in that particular. That's a very dangerous sport. It takes one, just ask Joe Montana, it takes one hit and your career is over. So why not stop when you're at the pinnacle? And I don't want to make the conversation about him. I'm not trying to derail the conversation, but it takes one hit, and that one hit could put you in a wheelchair. It could put you in, like, you're healthy. Quit now while you're ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to
see that's different.
I think he would be
That's-
compromising though, and the
Bro,
reason
bro.
why is I understand everything that you
Ooh,
said
that's a good one.
100%. But when you met me, I played football.
Mhm.
We 20 years down the road, let's go back. I still met you playing football.
Mhm.
Yes, I decided I changed and different things like that. I got all these Super Bowl, I got all these accolades, blah, blah, blah. However, you met me as a football player. I'm
Mhm.
still that dude. Maybe I'm not ready.
Right.
And why is it that I should have to compromise now for you or for the relationship when I knew day one I'm a football player? Who are you to tell me when I have to hang it up? And I'm just playing devil's advocate.
I know.
Because I really want to understand. Like, I really do want to understand.
Right.
Okay, I got you. Okay, go ahead, coach. No, I'm letting the coach.
No, big facts. And I agree with what you're saying, but I
Yeah.
think, and I only use him as an example.
Yeah.
But we're going along in this example, assuming that there was a compromise that was made. Who knows? Maybe that was something that he suggested to her. We don't know. You
Yeah.
see what I'm saying? I only use that as an example. I'll give you another perfect example. When Miss Unkle Junior met Uncle Junior, he was wearing the uniform. At some point, he decided to hang that uniform up. You see what I'm saying? And so I think ideally we all get to that point. We all get to that point. So you know what? I've done this. I can do it from a different perspective. Just like me, I hung the uniform up and I still work with soldiers. I just don't have to do the deployments. I don't have to do the PT. And for me, I share with them. I appreciate not having to do that these days, but I give them the best version I have today. And that comes along with 24 years of prior military experience. And I give it to them to such a degree that they appreciate it. And so I'm still doing what I enjoy doing. I'm still helping soldiers. I'm still serving the Army, but I'm just doing it in a different capacity. And I think that's kind of like what that compromise looks like. But here's the deal. That compromise did not happen between me and a conversation with anybody else. That was the compromise I made with myself, because I would tell you at a certain point, I didn't enjoy it like I used to. And so I said, you know what? I still want to do it, but I'm going to do it from a different perspective now. And I think that's what it looks like. When we get older, we just change the way we do the same thing.
But let's just say, Garfield, and this is what I've heard through the grapevine with all that. You had that conversation with your wife. Giselle said, you said to her, I'm retired, I'm done. She's pleaded with you. You haven't had that much time with the kids. This is what you promised. This is what you made that verbal agreement with her. You said you were done, and you go, great. You're going to have more time with the kids. I'm backing you up until when you tell me you're going to be done, right? I have my money. I don't need your money. So that wasn't the issue. But I'm going off what you said, that this is your last season. I don't like to see you get hit no more. You're already walking a little bit funny. The arthritis is kicking in. And you told me you were done with the game. And I said, okay, when? You said, I'm going to be done with the game at this time. I am done. Honey, I'm walking away. And I said, you know what? I'm going to back you till the end, till that day. Do you. And that day comes, and I tell the kids, and I have that comment, Daddy's done after this. We are going to have him full time. And you come and break that agreement. That's why I have to agree with her, because she had that discussion with you, and I believe they did. I don't believe it ended overnight. I don't know the intricacies of it, but if you have that conversation with your wife and you narrowed it down and you said that to her, you're in the wrong to go back and play, because she stood by you through the whole time. What you said, the booze it. Now you're saying, you know what? I got one more in me. She's like, well, no, now you're breaking the agreement that we had as a couple and as a marriage and as life, and moving on to doing other things. So you're breaking a solid agreement, and I don't need you for the money. I'd walk.
I agree. In that case, if I'm a football player, at a certain point, we have a conversation and we decide together. It's not a compromise. The agreement changed and we both agree on it. Now, this is the new agreement. This is the new lease. You know what I'm saying? So now we have to abide by these agreements. If that happened and he decided on his own to go do something, then I agree. He was in the wrong 100% because you decided to change the new agreement that we both agreed on.
Right.
So in that case, he's absolutely wrong.
Yeah. Okay. So then, yeah, I agree with you 100% on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the whole when should you sacrifice or when should you compromise your passion or your purpose, or if you would compromise your passion or purpose for a person, is when your passion or purpose is something that you have lived and you've already thrived in, and it's becoming a detriment to the people around you, and it's becoming a detriment to the union. You've already lived it. You've already taken in as much money as you can. You have enough to survive. You have enough to provide. You have enough to do what you need to do as a man and be productive and be useful to yourself and everybody around you. And you're doing it to a point where it's running you ragged and your resources are cool, but the person is useless. You understand what I'm saying? I think that's when you should take some time out to think about it. And this whole Tom Brady thing, coach said it right. It takes one hit and then you're done. You understand what I'm saying? We just had a boy have a heart attack on the field during a football game. You understand what I'm saying? And this man said that he was going to quit, and he went out and played this dangerous game for another season or two, knowing what it could have done to his future if he got hit the wrong way or if his offensive line failed him. You understand what I'm saying? That's when I think the compromise is. That's when I think the compromise should happen, when the person is useless. The resources are fine, the money is fine, but if I'm doing all of these things and I've done these things for a multitude of years and I'm running my body ragged to the point where they only see me as resources and money instead of a dude that can actually do something, that's when the compromise should take place.
Get it, man. I don't have no issue with that. Hey, Adrian, shout out to you, man. You've been eating up the chat, man. You've been having a lot of good talking points and stuff. We've been over here looking at them and nodding
That's
our
my man,
heads and
50
different
grand
things
right
like
there,
that,
man. Shout
man.
out to
So,
Adrian.
yeah, shout out to you, Adrian. You know, really adding a lot of value to the conversation. Ravonda, appreciate you. Everybody who's been in the chat, Reload Sim, you know, B Smith here to step out, but appreciate you being here. Mr. Edward Jones, Ice Strong 25, Zay, again, appreciate you being here. Me and Zay go back a few years. That's my man right there. So shout out to him. But ladies and gentlemen, we're about to wrap up the show. But before we do, we're going to get into the final thoughts. And we're going to start with Mr. Who's going first? Antoine. Let's go, Antoine. What you got, brother? You got to unmute first.
Every week.
This was for me. This was a really good conversation, right? Because compromise and following one goal is something I'm really passionate about, right? Because I believe in no way, shape, or form should anybody compromise their goals for anyone or anything. I believe they should, because you'll always have that regret, and you'll always say, "Would I have made it if I just continued?" And I wouldn't want anybody to go down that path of thought. So there's levels of it. There's levels of compromising, but a compromise for me is a sacrifice. And I don't think anybody should make that for what they want to do and achieve their goals. I believe that you could talk about it. You should stay on the path to pursue it. You should make some arrangements, take your head out, lift your head up and smell the roses, because there's things outside of you and your goals. But I don't think you should make any whatsoever compromise with it. No, not even if you're in a solid, hot, heavy relationship. No. She met you when you were on that path, and I think she should be there to support you and follow you till the end.
All right. So, objectively speaking, compromise is about general flexibility and leadership. It falls underneath accountable masculinity rule number 3, decentralized leadership. And it's about knowing when to lead and when to follow. Are you receptive and coachable? Being able to articulate healthy compromise through action is the metric of showing your work and your genuine intent. You have to compromise for both unhealthy and healthy outcomes. The type of choice you make determines the nature of the compromise. Is your compromise self-serving? Is your compromise a burden to others? Do not confuse compromise with sacrifice. Sacrifice is when you have an easy option and choose the hard right decision for the desired outcome. Compromise is the act of negotiating equity in a planned outcome. The difference is based on what you're doing it for. Is it to be a people pleaser or to be a team player? You have to compromise your present comfort for the uncertainty of understanding your undetermined future growth. If you don't make the blueprint, don't expect the structure to appear. We are not a monolithic people, and we have different ways to solve the same problem with different logic. Compromise is part of establishing and maintaining healthy boundaries in life. You can't please everybody. That's the true sacrifice. Pick up the book, get the code. Clip that.
My final thoughts are simple. Like I said earlier, man, compromise and sacrifice, they're synonymous sometimes, but they're not always synonymous. And compromise isn't necessarily a bad thing. As long as you're not compromising your standards, your beliefs, and your core values, compromise is a good thing. You need to compromise to be able to work with people. That's my final thought.
I will keep it short and sweet because I mean, I agree with everything that was said already. I think when it comes down to compromising your identity and your values, you need to understand the things that you will not compromise first and foremost. If you don't have a clear vision of that, then you will be second guessing and guessing when it comes down to everything that's brought to you. So first and foremost, make sure that you have a clear vision for your life. Under that vision, make sure that you have already established priorities. If you are married, make sure that you guys discuss those priorities as well. Under those, with those priorities already being established, now we understand the things that we cannot and will not compromise. I think that just makes sense. So when it comes down to it, we have a clear vision, we have clear priorities, and now when things come up, we will understand what we need to talk about and the things that we just don't necessarily need to talk about. That moving forward should answer every question when it comes down to compromise and sacrifice. I agree with what was said previously. Make sure that you have a clear understanding of compromise versus sacrifice. And again, when you sacrifice, make sure that you understand what the end state is and then move in that direction. And that's just it.
Amen. I appreciate it, man. I appreciate all y'all brothers being here tonight, supporting, being here, giving your information, giving your feedback, giving your conversation, giving your elevated dialogue, all of that stuff. Again, another shout out to everybody in the chat. It was fire over tonight. You know, you guys added a lot of value. You know what I mean? We was really looking over there. It was a nice, a lot of great conversations going on over there that was being had. Everybody who watched at home, I appreciate you for being here with us tonight. Again, gentlemen, thank y'all for being here tonight. This Friday, not elevated dialogue. This Friday, Empowering Perspective podcast. Stay tuned. Code Talk may have something going on. And lastly, don't forget, check out the Bold and Driven EP. They got a bunch of things going on, and anything else. Look in the description down below, and there's a lot of other different people that, well, if you want to link up with any of us at any capacity, all our information will be in the description. So hit the like button, share all those good things. We're going to see y'all again next week, same time, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, the Unkle Junior Network. We out, and peace.